Hey guys, welcome back to The Curly Reader. My name's Amanda, and today I want to share with you some of my favorite middle grade historical fiction. Alright, so I have been trying to recommend lots of historical fiction to you guys over the past couple of weeks, and today I want to do one of my favorite categories, and that is middle grade. So you will have noticed in my previous videos I did not include any middle grade, and that was for a reason. So today is going to be all full of middle grade recommendations. These are both World War II, non-World War II. It's just the whole gamut of everything. These are some of my favorites. I picked only off my shelves, so there may be some missing from this list, but I feel like this is a good list to get you started. And then if you're looking for more, just hit me up and I'll make sure to get you those as well. All right, so the only one that I do not have with me today, I own it, but it is currently lent out to a friend for a good reason, is Jeffersons Sons by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. This book, you guys, this was my favorite book of 2020, middle grade, my favorite middle grade book of 2020. And this book follows the sons that Thomas Jefferson had with his slave, Sally Hemings. It's told from the point of view of two of his sons and then another slave boy at Monticello. And it just follows them and kind of details and goes into their lives on what it was like to be owned by your father, and you know, just really got into the mind of what it meant to be striving for the love of a father who was never going to show you the love that you wanted, and to watch your mother deal with sacrificing a lot of her dignity to provide for your future. And it was completely heartbreaking. One of the best final pages of a book I've ever read. It just evoked so much emotion in me. This book has left a lasting impression on me. I will never ever forget reading it, and I hope to reread it soon. But yeah, highly recommend this book. All right, moving on. Next, we have Esperanza Rising by Pam Munoz Ryan. Pam Munoz Ryan and Kimberly Brubaker Bradley are probably my two favorite middle grade authors of all time. I loved this book. In this book, we follow Esperanza. She lives on a plantation in Mexico. She's very well-to-do, and then something happens and she has to leave, and her and her mother flee to America, and it is set, I don't actually remember when it is set. It's like the early 1900s, I believe. And so they go to California and they start working on a plantation there. I believe a grape plantation in California. And they have to do manual labor, and Esperanza is acclimating to life from one extreme of kind of the wealth scale to the other, and really kind of scared for what's happening. Labor strikes are discussed in this as well. It is just so well done, and it's just, yeah, it's a great one. So another one by Pam Munoz Ryan that is really high up on my list of favorite middle grade books of all time, and that is Echo by Pam Munoz Ryan. This book, if you're gonna read this book, get it on audio. You will not regret it. This book follows a magical harmonica and the role it plays in the lives of three different kids in three different points in history. One is told during World War II in Germany. One is told in Pennsylvania in, I'm not gonna be able to remember now what the time span is, I think in 40s, and the other one is on the West Coast in California shortly after World War II. And so yeah, it's just so good. The audiobook has a lot of musical elements in it, and so that's why I say get the audio, because the music adds so much to the story. You're following this harmonica, like I said, the role it plays in each of these kids' lives. You get to hear the music. It's super just captivating, and I absolutely adored it. It is a chunker. It is worth every second of your time, for sure. All right, another one of my favorite books of 2020 that I would be remiss not to mention is Everything Else in the Universe by Tracy Holzer. This is one that takes place during the Vietnam War, and it follows our main character, what is her name? Lucia. And I think she goes by Lucy. And she is an only child, and her father is a doctor, and he gets called up for medical draft, and so he has to go to the war, and he comes back without an arm. And so he can't be a doctor anymore because he was a surgeon. And so she is kind of watching her dad go through this really difficult time. She's trying to process what it means for her. She meets a friend. They're trying to like solve kind of, not this kind of a mystery. They find a medal of honor, or a Purple Heart. That's what it is. They find a Purple Heart buried in a garden, and they're trying to figure out who it belongs to so they can return it to its owner. And in doing that, they start exploring some of the veterans' homes and kind of realize that the attitude of former like veterans towards the Vietnam veterans is really sour. And this talks a lot about the political climate in the US towards the Vietnam War, and it was so good. Loved this book so much. All right, another Vietnam War book is Until Tomorrow, Mr. Marsworth. This takes place in Minnesota during the Vietnam War, and we follow our main character, Rini. Not even close. Rini, who has she's taken on a paper route, and she starts writing letters to one of her clients because she goes to meet all of her clients and he won't answer the door. And so she writes him a letter, and they start corresponding back and forth. And so it's told in all letters, it's epistolary, and it just kind of talks about Rini, and she's very concerned that her brother is going to be drafted, and she doesn't think that's going to be good for him because he just doesn't have the mindset of a soldier. And so it talks a lot about pacifism and conscientious objection. It talks about kind of the attitude in the Midwest about conscientious objectors and what that was like. It's so good. Oh, I love this. This is just one of those books that you want to hug when you're done with it because it's just, I love it. All right. Another one by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley that I absolutely love. This is the one that got me on the Kimberly Brubaker Bradley train, is The War That Saved My Life. This is a World War II historical fiction. There's also a second one for this. It's a duology. It's called The War I Finally Won. But this one follows Ada, who has a club foot. She lives in London during World War II, and she is very abused by her mother. And so when all of the children are escaping London or being sent out of London, she escapes and gets on the train and goes to live in the countryside. Her and her brother do. And so they are placed in the care of an elderly-ish woman who does not really want the kids there at all. And so it kind of follows them and their relationship that they start to develop with this woman, and vice versa, her with them, and just kind of what was going on and out in the country at that time. And this book covers the topic, I believe, of children's anxiety so well. And just kind of the trauma that you deal with when you're dealing with an abused child, and the panic attacks and things like that happen, especially when you're in the middle of a war. On top of all of that, it was just handled with such reality that it was, I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. Go read it. You will love it too. All right. I have two more on my list. The first is Refugee by Alan Gratz. This is actually the only historical fiction by Alan Gratz I've ever read, and I really want to read more because I know he writes a ton, but I really love this one. I actually had my daughter read this one as well, but this one follows three different refugees. One is a Jewish boy living in the 1930s in Nazi Germany. One is a Cuban girl living in 1994 in Cuba, and another one is a Syrian boy in 2015 living in Syria. And they're all trying to escape their countries for various reasons. And so you get to know them and why they're leaving. You get to hear about their journey that they're taking, as they're taking it, the roadblocks that they're facing. It's so fantastic to see the parallel between all of the different timelines and what's happening with each of them, and to show, as much as we change over time, there are some threads of humanity that have not changed, and this is one of them. So this is absolutely fantastic. Love it. And then the last one that I have here is a Revolutionary War historical fiction, and that is Chains by Laurie Halse Anderson. This is the first in the Seeds of America trilogy. This is the only one I've read of the trilogy so far. I'm hoping to finish this trilogy this year, crossing my fingers, because this was really good. It was very different than what I thought it was going to be when I went into it, but this follows a slave during the Revolutionary War who becomes a spy for the Patriots. And so she is a slave of one of the English people. I don't know, whatever. And she becomes a spy and is trying to escape, and it's very interesting to see kind of what her motivations are, why she's doing what she's doing. It talks a lot about, it's set in New York City, and so it talks a lot about like what was going on in New York City, some of the battles, some of the attacks, that sort of thing. It is very gruesome. I will say that. This is not one for younger middle grade readers for sure. It's gory. It's kind of gross sometimes, but if you can handle that, for sure pick this up because it is totally worth it. So those are my favorite, like top tier middle grade historical fiction recommendations that I think that you should read. If you have a favorite middle grade historical fiction, let me know down below in the comments. I would love to add some more to my list. And if you have read any of these, I would love to hear what you thought about them down below as well. And yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya.